they're literally at their wits' end. So they want to give up, they want to sell, but of course nobody's buying holiday let properties in Wales at the moment. 47% of those who have reverted to council tax plus premium are now either making no profit or a loss. That's nearly half. That's pretty bad. There's only one solution to this. 182 is too high.
Is the Welsh Government ruining the country's holiday let sector? What is the impact of the 182-day threshold, and what do operators need to tell the government during this vital consultation period? Nicky Williamson from PASC UK's Wales branch is the special guest on today's House Planet podcast. Nicky, thank you for joining us on the Host Planet podcast. Let's start by explaining the 182-day threshold in Wales. Just explain to us what this is all about.
Okay, so the 182-day threshold is it's a new piece of legislation which came in effective April 2023. Prior to that, a self-catering business needed to be available for 140 days and let for 70 days. The new piece of legislation increased those numbers, so they have to be available for 252 days and they have to be let for 182 days.
So 182 days. Now, this is basically half the year, isn't it? Exactly 6 months. And we should probably say at this point that in the UK, the days and rules are different depending on where you are. It's different in Wales, it's different in England, it might even be different in Scotland as well. I know I've got a couple of properties in England and I think we've got to be let for 104, if that's right off the top of my head. You probably know the numbers better than me. So there's a big difference between just over 100 compared to 182. So talk us through the impact of this on operators in Wales.
Okay, so actually in England it's still 70. So it hasn't increased from, it used to be the same as Wales, and Wales has now increased theirs. So they've increased it by 2.5 times. So it's pretty significant. So it's been pretty brutal, to be honest. We talk about half a year. I actually get very frustrated when people talk about half a year, being able to operate for half a year, because that assumes that you're only a business when you've got guests in. And we all know that every business needs an awful lot of things doing behind the scenes in order to be ready. So it's a bit like saying a primary school is not a school and it's not a business unless it's got kids in the classrooms. So about half a year is a term that's used, but it's not as simple as that because trends have changed. So whereas, I don't know, pre-COVID, people used to book for 7 nights, 14 nights. They used to book in week bookings. Now what happens is they book late and they probably book for 3 nights, maybe 4 nights. So even if you think about it in terms of weeks, it's a lot less than it used to be.
Okay, real talk now for all you hosts out there. You know that moment when your guest messages you again with, "Hey, what's the Wi-Fi code?" Or you're staring at 5 different calendars, wondering if you've accidentally double booked the cottage. Yes, we've all been there. That's why here at House Planet, we recommend Hostfully. It's basically your rentals control centre. It handles bookings across all the big platforms, syncs your calendars to ensure there are no double bookings, automates guest messages, and even creates these really slick digital guidebooks that stop all the repeat questions. Honestly, it just makes your life easier and keeps your guests happier, helping you achieve those all-important 5-star reviews. And here is a little bonus. If you're a House Planet listener, you can get $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Just hit the link in the show notes and use the codes PLANET500 for the PMS and HousePlanetGB for the guidebooks. And if you'd like a proper walkthrough, there's also a link to book a demo with Frank Bosey from Hostfully. He will show you how it all works. Less stress, more bookings, sorted with Hostfully. Do you have any statistics that you can share in relation to especially full-time operators, I'm thinking here. Are full-time operators really struggling to get to 182? Do we know the percentage of people who just can't really achieve it?
Yeah. We, in our last, it's about a half cannot achieve it. And that's whoever you listen to. So if you listen to Welsh Government, they'll tell you it's 60%, but that's not a pure figure. But according to all our surveys, it's about a half. Some surveys will tell you it's less than that. But I mean, even if you took the Welsh Government figure of 60% and making it, that means 40% of businesses are failing. And that's not a good statistic.
So with 40% of businesses failing, I mean, what's the impact specifically on those businesses? If you can't operate, you can't meet the 182-day minimum, what happens?
So the 182 minimum is to allow you to access business rates. So you would pay, as a business, you would pay business rates. If you fail to meet the 182, then you get reverted to council tax. So it's non-domestic to domestic. And then what happens is there is an additional premium added. So the premiums in Wales can be up to 300% of council tax. So basically that means you're potentially paying up to 400% council tax.
And real term figures then, what are we talking? Like say, I don't know, let's say you've got a 2-bedroom holiday let property. What would you expect to pay in council tax if you can't meet the 182 days?
So the most common council tax premium is 150%. And that's in most of the sort of hotspot counties, local authorities. To give you an example of a 2-bed near to where I live, you would probably pay about 2,000. If you were paying normal council tax, you would pay just short of 6 if you were paying council tax plus a premium. Now, if you put that into real terms, the average revenue of a 2-bed property is around 20,000. That's revenue, that's not profit. Once you've taken away all your costs, your laundry, your cleaning, your gardening, your utilities, your commission to your agency, all of those things, once you take those away, you might make 3,000. If you're a bit leaner, you might make 5,000. So if you're paying a council tax premium of 6,000, that's taken away any profit that you may have had. And what we're hearing in our latest survey is that I think it's 47% of those who have reverted to council tax plus premium are now either making no profit or a loss. That's nearly half. That's pretty bad. So basically, it's unviable.
Are those people where it is unviable, are they giving up? What are they telling you?
Yeah, they're trying to give up. To be honest, there's a mental health crisis out there. People are absolutely at their wits' end. What's happening is people are getting council tax bills that they can't pay. At the moment, they're getting council tax bills plus premiums backdated for 3 years. So these are bills in the tens of thousands of pounds, and they can't pay them. And they're literally at their wits' end. So they want to give up, they want to sell, but of course nobody's buying holiday let properties in Wales at the moment. So they're trapped. Some people that we used to hear an awful lot about, I'm having sleepless nights about this. That was a year ago. A year on, sleepless nights has turned into much worse. And people are just beside themselves and they can't get out. And then if you're in a county such as Gwynedd, where they've now introduced Article 4, that puts even more restriction. So that restricts on who they can sell to and how and what purpose they can sell their properties for. So yeah, people are at their wits' end, quite frankly.
And what is PASC doing to help? What are you trying to do in terms of lobbying and talking to the Welsh politicians and the Welsh government? I mean, ideally, what would you like to see happen?
There's only one solution to this. 182 is too high. So there are many, many things that are being bandied about. The consultation talks about different things at the moment, but the only way to solve this problem is to lower 182. It's simply too high. Lower 182 and a lot of the problems associated will go away.
Where should it be lowered to? I mean, ideally, as operators, we're probably going to say, well, as low as possible. I mean, in the past there, you were saying it was 70 days you've got to be operational for. You would imagine the Welsh government, are not going to go back to what it was previously. Where do you think is a reasonable number?
So that's the burning question, isn't it? And that's the question that is always asked. So if you go back to the original consultation, the majority, there were 8 people, I believe, that said 182. So that gives you an idea that it's not right. Everyone else was lower than that. The original FHL tax allowance was 105. So that would be a sensible suggestion, in my opinion. But the reality is, if you actually did a proper consultation, if you did a proper impact assessment, that would give you the number. That would tell you what the number should be.
So the suggestion being there then that there really hasn't been a proper impact assessment of what's happening in terms of the Welsh holiday let market. So, I mean, has nothing really been done previously? Are we seeing kind of the same old issue here with policy making, that often the lawmakers don't really have the right data at their fingertips?
They certainly don't have the right data. I mean, you'll see that with other policy making decisions. So, for example, the tourism levy, that is based on their impact assessment for the tourism levy is that it's based on there being between 16,000 and, wait for it, 55,000 holiday let businesses in Wales. So that's not a number, that's not a range that I would ever make a business decision on. So there is a huge lack of data. There is an easy solution to that. We have long been calling for statutory registration. So statutory registration done well would give the data that they need in order to be able to make good decisions.
What does statutory registration done well look like, do you think?
So statutory registration done well is something that is simple and straightforward, doesn't become a burden, but also asks some simple compliance checks, and also requires you to upload documents, which, to be honest, these are documents that you would normally have. So if you advertise your holiday let business with an agency, you would be asked for fire risk assessment, gas safety certificate, public liability insurance certificate. So those are the things that you would be asked for anyway. And so statutory registration done well would require an upload of those. That would then create a level playing field. It would create a safe environment, and it would ensure that you had the correct standard of safety for the consumers. And it would give the data that they need.
Data, well, yeah, we all need the right data, don't we? Continuing on the data theme then, I mean, what's the impact here in terms of visitor numbers and the wider tourism industry in Wales if we continue to see a drop-off in the number of holiday lets in the country?
Well, the holiday lets in Wales are the bedstock. So people want to come to traditional Welsh homes. They want to be self-sufficient. But the reality is that there aren't an awful lot of hotels, so there aren't a lot of options. I mean, in some counties, I mean, take Ceredigion, for example, there's hardly any hotels there. So what's the option? So where can they go? Where can they stay if the holiday let numbers are going down? But the reality is the visitor numbers are going down as well. So between 2022 and 2024, the overnight visitor numbers have gone down by 29%. So, and that's a Welsh Government number. That's the number that Welsh Government are publishing. So, and a lot of that is being seen by self-catering operators. So the latest WAVE report that the tourism barometer that they publish, basically said that 47% of self-catering businesses are seeing less numbers. But then that extends to attractions. So visitors to attractions are down, some as much as 30%. So it's the whole visitor economy really that's feeling it.
We mentioned the consultation a little bit earlier, and this is ongoing now, so people can respond to this. The consultation is proposing averaging 182 days over 2 to 3 years and counting up to 14 charity nights. I mean, it seems to me like the last thing operators need is to be contributing to charity nights at the moment. But in practical terms, do you think these tweaks will materially help operators, or is it just a bit of token nonsense really that's not going to make much difference?
Obviously, we appreciate the fact that they are consulting on it. So that it's put it back in the spotlight. It also acknowledges the fact that it does need to be, there are flaws in the policy and it does need to be addressed. We're surprised by what came out in the consultation. We're concerned by what came out in the consultation, but we also think that this is an opportunity to feedback on all points. And that was made pretty clear, actually, in there was a question to Mark Drakeford in the Senate this week, and he made it very clear that actually you should be responding on all aspects of the policy, not just those tweaks or those token gestures, as he mentioned. But to look at them specifically, people are already suffering from 182 being such a cliff edge. So if you make 182 nights, you're not a business. If you make 182 nights, you are. And it's such a cliff edge. And even the ones that do make it, they're not making it easily. And they're doing everything they can to make it. They're pulling out every trick in the book. And the ones that aren't making it, it's even worse because they're not even getting there. So if you have and so much of it is completely out of their control. So if you have a bad weather summer, if it rains all summer, and if it rains all summer in year one, then you're already behind for year two. So there's even more pressure. And that it just creates more pressure over a 3-year period. So I appreciate what they're trying to do, but it's going to be very difficult. I think it's going to make that mental health aspect even worse. And if the visitor numbers continue with the same trend that they're displaying at the moment, then that's really not going to help. And the point about charity weeks, this was something. It's great. It's something that holiday let owners have done a lot of in the past. And it's great that they're going to now acknowledge that it should be included. But if we're looking for exemptions, there's so many that should be before that. So the local authorities already have the discretion to be able to use their discretion, basically, but they're not. So we've done 2 freedom of information requests. We've had minimal responses that are showing any sort of discretion at all. So we did one in 23, one in 24. And I think there were 2 local authorities that declared that they were doing something. One was doing a payment plan and one was giving a year's grace, actually, on the premium. So they should be doing it anyway. So adding charitable weeks is not really going to cut the mustard. We've got some pretty horrible experiences going on out there. So we've got people, I can think of a member, his wife has terminal cancer. He is spending too much of his time worrying about whether he's making 182. And what makes it even worse is she's worrying about him worrying about 182. So there's some pretty horrible experiences out there. And then that discretion's not being applied. So yeah, it'd be lovely to do the charitable donations, but I'm not sure that's really high on the priority list. I've got another member who he had to shut for a certain amount of time because he wanted to go as carbon zero as he could. He wanted to get to net zero, so he spent a lot of time renovating and putting in new systems. And as a result, he only made 111 nights. As a result, he then got reverted back to council tax plus premiums and got a huge bill. So it doesn't seem to fit with. It doesn't fit with the overall objectives.
You mentioned there that some operators are using every trick in the book to get to 182 and beyond. What are they being forced to do to reach the threshold?
You've got to remember that these people, what are our statistics? The majority of holiday let owners are Welsh. So half of them live within 10 miles. And 50%, I think, live next door. And then I need to check those numbers for you. But the majority of them are Welsh residents. And what I mean by every trick in the book is that they're meeting 182 at any cost. And any cost might mean their health, might mean financial, but they're all discounting. So 86% are discounting in order to get to 182. Now that then has a knock-on effect on everyone. So if you can get a really cheap deal in a holiday let, then you're not going to stay in a hotel, and that's driving the hotel prices down. So it's affecting everybody.
What's your message to Welsh operators in relation to the consultation? What do they need to be doing and saying to the Welsh Government?
They need to take it seriously as a consultation. I'm pretty sure that there will be an awful lot of data that comes into this consultation, and it won't be restricted to those three aspects that they're consulting on. The message is very, very clear. 182 is too high. Way too high.
We mentioned then there's a talk of a grace period before properties revert to council tax. What do you think the minimum grace period and process would be fair and workable, of course, for councils, especially when we consider the valuation office backlog?
I think what would be fair is to use the discretion appropriately that they already have. So you can't put a time limit on the chap I told you about whose wife's got terminal cancer. You just can't do that. I think the unfortunate thing is that the local authority discretion is discretionary. I think if it was mandatory, then we would see it happening more often. To be honest, if you got 182, if you got the level right, you wouldn't need to have the grace period.
In terms of the intentions of the Welsh Government, what were the intentions of the Welsh Government when they introduced 182? And do you think they're achieving those intentions?
So our understanding is that the intention was to bring back housing stock into the housing market for local families, local people. We're not seeing much evidence of that. They're hitting the wrong people. So the sort of expense you've got second homes, you've got holiday let businesses, and you've got everything in between. So your second homes, if they're being sold, they're never going to be bought by young local families. They're just completely out of their range. So what we're seeing is that the houses that are coming back onto the market are either just sitting there, or they're being recycled into other second home owners. The other thing that we're seeing is, because of the way they're priced, they're not access entry housing. They're not affordable. So what we're seeing is that the people that can afford them tend to be retirees from out of the area who've downsized. And that doesn't really help anybody, because they're probably retired, they're probably not particularly economically active, and as they get older, they're just going to draw on the community as opposed to really add to the community. Whereas a holiday let business brings people in all the time. They make recommendations of pubs, of restaurants, of cafes. They're there on the high street. They're visiting attractions, and they're bringing money in. And as well as that, you're seeing all the maintenance, all the laundry, all the cleaning, the gardening. They're employing local people. They're part of their own community. They're employing local people. I heard about a building company the other day who, quite a reasonable sized building company, employs 50 people directly. And he's really worried now because the drop in business means that he might have to lay off some of his team. And those are the sorts of effects that we're seeing now. So it's not protecting the communities as they intended. It's having the opposite effect.
How might the political landscape in Wales change things over the next few years? And if you can, what are the kind of conversations that you've been having with the different political parties about 182?
We've had lots of conversations with all political parties, and the one thing that comes out in all of my conversations when I'm speaking to them 101, and this is every party, is that 182 is too high. Everybody recognises it, but when speaking formally, it doesn't always get translated. What I would like to do is just give everybody a break. Just pause all of the legislation. We've got 22 pieces of legislation that are hitting self-catering owners at the moment. 22. And if you had any one of those 22 would have an impact. So what we really need to do is get statutory registration done properly so we know what the sector looks like, then pause, then agree on how they move forward with policy and legislation. And really, what needs to happen is tourism in Wales needs a boost. If you think back, tourism and agriculture they're the two consistent of Wales, aren't they? They're always there. And if you damage farming and you damage tourism, what have we got left? So tourism needs to be celebrated. And sometimes you just need to drive around Wales and just remind yourself of how amazing it is. So yeah, I think the legislation needs to reflect that. I think we need some policies that celebrate tourism in Wales, that push tourism in Wales. The croeso, the actual genuine croeso, the genuine welcome of Welsh people. That's what our members have been doing for decades. That's what they love doing. And sadly, 182's just taken that joy away.
Let's imagine Mark Drakeford is in front of us right now. What would your message be to him?
My message to Mark Drakeford would be to really listen. Listen to what the sector have been saying to him. Look at the data that we've been putting in front of him and recognise the assets that Wales has and celebrate those assets. And actually read every comment that comes in the consultation, because that will tell you that 182 is not working.
182 not working and a lot of other challenges, but let's end on a positive note. Tell us why self-catering, holiday letting is great in Wales and does have a bright future.
Because it's made up of thousands of micro businesses who absolutely love Wales, absolutely celebrate the heritage, the culture, the language. And it's that pride that brings people back year on year. I've got members who have been doing it for decades, 60 years. I've got one member she's in her 90s and she takes such pride in her cottage. And it's all of those thousands, actually, of people who are bringing people back to Wales for everything. I mean, I'm just looking out the window here. The sun's shining. It's blue skies. I can see the mountains. I can't quite see the sea, but I can nearly see the sea. And take a little drive from here, and within a 5-minute drive, you can see 5 castles. It's like nowhere else. It's an absolutely magical nation, and we should be really celebrating that because it's got so much to offer.
Absolutely. Gorgeous country, magical place, like Nicky says. So do yourself a favour, and also do the Welsh tourism industry a favour as well. Book yourself your next holiday in Wales. Nicky, just before you go, where can people find out more information about PASC, and just explain to us how PASC are helping and lobbying in relation to this situation?
So PASC, we're a very small team, but we're all very passionate. We're all operators, so we all do it ourselves. So we get it, we understand it, and all of us are very dedicated to what we do. So you can find more about. I mean, if you look at our website, you'll find more about it. But one of the things that we do is we do a weekly newsletter. That weekly newsletter is crammed with information, and that will. What we try and do with that is we do the thinking for you. So if it's not in the newsletter, it's not something you have to worry about this week. But yeah, we're a membership organisation. We have about 500 individual members in Wales. We also have a couple of the big agencies, which means that we're able to. So our reach is probably in excess of 10,000 in Wales, and that's because of we work with Sykes, we work with Travel Chapter, and they're part of our membership base. So we lobby very hard, and so the big pieces that we do, it's the advocacy stuff, but it's also the supporting our members. So at the moment, we have hundreds of members that are suffering because of council tax premiums and backdated council tax premiums, and there's a lot that we can do to help people with that. So you never need to feel like you're on your own.
PASC doing a lot of fantastic work, and we'll put the link to their website in the show notes. Nicky, thank you so much for joining us on the show and for explaining everything that's going on in Wales.
Thank you. Can I do one last shout out?
Of course, go for it.
So we do have some successes. We work very hard on behalf of the members and the sector. But there's one group of people that I'd really like to do a shout out. So we have some fantastic members. A lot of what we do benefits the whole sector, but it's our members that pay for it. And it's them that put their hands in their pockets and put their money where their mouth is. So my big shout out actually is to our members and our agency members who do that for us.
Great to chat to Nicky Williamson there from PASC UK's Wales branch. If you're a Welsh operator, make sure you take part in that government consultation. All right, that's it for today's show. Remember, this podcast is brought to you in collaboration with Hostfully, which is trusted by short-term rental professionals across the globe. As a House Planet listener, you get 2 exclusive offers. $500 off onboarding for Hostfully's property management software. Just use the code PLANET500 and 30% off digital guidebooks for life. Use the code HousePlanetGB. To grab these deals, click the link in the show notes or head to housefully.com. For more free education, tips and trends from the STR industry, visit houseplanet.club, where you can sign up for our newsletter, listen to our podcasts, and download a suite of ebooks for hosts and property managers. That's it for today's episode. Until next time, happy hosting.